Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. The theme for the Sunday talk today is choose life, choose inconvenience, which struck me as a very interesting title. The system that we go by every year, I invite the members of the Sangha to suggest topics, and they give me a long list. And so I look through them and pick out 12 or 13 for the Sunday afternoons during the Rains Retreat. This one that struck me, I thought, oh, that's an interesting way of putting things. It's also the term "choose life" that reminded me of a well-known statement at the beginning of a series of stories about heroin addicts in Edinburgh called Train Spotting. Some of you may be completely unfamiliar with this, but it starts off by saying, choose life, and then goes through a long list of choosing to have a job, paying a mortgage, watching game shows on television, and so on and so forth, as if that was life. And then the narrator of the story says, I chose not to choose life. And for what reason? There are no reasons. Who needs reasons when you've got heroin? So I thought, I'm not advertising heroin addiction as a way to transcend suffering, but it in a way epitomized that the way that the mind can frame things, and that we see that the only way towards happiness, if the mind is governed by ignorance, the only way we can find happiness or satisfaction is to completely drug the mind or completely distract the mind from reality. So the Buddha's teaching is in completely the opposite direction. To choose life, not through choosing to blot things out through chemical means, or to just switch off, or to not feel, but rather to turn towards the reality of life, towards nature, towards the way things are. And the second part of the title, choosing inconvenience, I'll go into in due course. So oftentimes when we meet with difficulties in life, we feel like, I don't want to bother, this is too much hassle, I've had enough of this, and we want to escape into watching television, or distracting ourselves with food, or with sleep, or with holidays, entertainments, shopping, various different things to occupy the mind. But as the kind of people who would gather for a Sunday afternoon to listen to a Dhamma talk would be probably well aware that those kind of things, they might bring a momentary relief, but they don't go any way to resolving our problems, our issues in life. And that the urge to switch off, or to say, I can't be bothered, or it's too much hassle, in a way that's heading towards what we call vibhava tanha, the desire to not feel, to not be, to not experience, to switch off. And so that we might call that non-attachment, or we might call that letting go, but in its essence, that sense of I can't be bothered, I'm not interested, someone else can do that. It's an aversion, it's a pushing away, it's a nihilism within us. So that most of us would like comfort and convenience. that we find satisfaction in life through having things go the way that we like. We want to have a secure enough living situation, enough money, enough social stability, so that things can be convenient and we can get what we like, and then we feel comfortable and happy. But why should it be that proposed that to choose life is to choose inconvenience? Or why would we think that those two things might come together? So that in that respect, the approach that we have in Buddha Dhamma, and particularly emphasized in the Thai forest tradition, is that, and this was something that Luang Por Chah would often emphasize, saying, if things are too comfortable, we just fall asleep. We become complacent, we switch off. If things are too easy, too comfortable, too convenient, then we become, indolent. We get complacent. We get lazy because things are comfortable. Why would I have to do anything about my mind? Because life is fine already. So he would always be arranging things at Wat Pah Pong and the branch monasteries, so that there was a certain degree of discomfort or inconvenience. And any of you who visited Wat Pah Pong, I think it's still very much the same now as it was in the 1970s when I lived there, that it's quite a bleak place. It's not set up for convenience or comfort. So just an ordinary day at Wat Pah Pong was quite challenging. The living conditions were, we each had a kuti, we had a shelter, but your furnishings in the kuti was a thin grass mat and a pillow. That's it. But that's your furniture. You might have a mosquito net if you're lucky. That's a good thing. Luang Por Chah was very proud of the fact that Wat Pah Pong had the worst food in the world. And that, and if the people who were preparing the food started to make it a bit too tasty, a bit too varied, a bit too fancy, then he would go in and give some feedback to the kitchen, like saying, "You're making this too nice." It's the monks are beginning to get excited when it's the meal time, so we need to simplify and make things a little less interesting. So that might seem a bit crazy or kind of counter to our ordinary human disposition, our ordinary human feelings. But Luang Por Chah was a very, very observant teacher and also a very faithful disciple of the Buddha. And he could see, well, that's the way it works, is that if things are too comfortable, too convenient, too easy, particularly in the sort of middle part of our life, if we don't have too many illnesses or too many disabilities or such like, we can just run on automatic. We can get say complacent. We can take things for granted. We can assume that there's always going to be a food supply. We're always going to be able to see. We're going to be able to hear. We're going to be able to walk around and do the things that we like to do. Of course. and he saw that being comfortable is nice, is pleasant, but just because it's pleasant then doesn't mean to say that it's useful. And so that he would arrange life at Wat Pah Pong so there was a certain degree of inconvenience, a certain degree of difficulty. So when we would go out on the alms round, again, those of you who've spent time in the northeast would know that the roads in those days were often paved with this red earth and these pebbles. And on the alms round, you always go barefoot, and so that you would have a very impactful effect on your feet as you're going on the alms round. You find yourself trying to find the smoothest patch of mud or a plain area where the stones weren't jagging into your feet. And so then sometimes people say, "Oh, Luang Por, why don't we sort of make an effort to smooth out the roads, and so then it's all kind of perfectly even underfoot." And so Luang Por would say something along the lines of, "Oh, so that you can just let your mind wander while you're on alms round? So you can just fantasize and let your mind drift?" He said, "No, that's the way the roads are, and if you're on the alms round on that particular kind of road, then that's the way it is, and you use that the discomfort that's coming through your feet to remind you to be awake, be aware. So you're not looking for ways to torture yourself, but using the circumstances of living simply and working with the environment as you find it, as something to learn from. So the principle he would often talk about, it's really encapsulated. It's there in the very first teaching of the Lord Buddha in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the discourse on the turning of the wheel of Dhamma, where he pointed out the two extremes are self-talk. On one, self-indulgence, trying to find happiness through maximizing pleasure, and then the other extreme of self-torture, trying to achieve happiness or freedom through frustrating the senses, through self-mortification, through what they call attakila yogo in Pali language. Indulgence in pleasure is kamasukhalikanu yogo. And so the middle way is what the Lord Buddha taught. And then the middle way is the way of understanding the realm of feeling, understanding perception. And then when he goes into speaking about the Four Noble Truths, then it's very significant. And again, Luang Por Sumedho would emphasize this point many, many times, saying that we get beyond suffering not by suppressing it or escaping from it, but by turning towards it and understanding it. And so that the first noble truth is there is dukkha. Sometimes people think, well, why didn't the Buddha say the first noble truth is nibbana, is peace, is liberation? Why pay attention to dukkha, to dissatisfaction? And the reasoning in this way is because if we don't bring attention to dukkha, to those feelings of dissatisfaction, if we just try to avoid them, or we wallow in them, we kind of take hold of that dukkha and say, "Oh, poor me, I'm having so much pain, so much difficulty. Why is life so bad to me?" That's all, like wallowing in dukkha, or pushing it away, distracting ourselves from dukkha by filling our mind with other pleasant experiences, or suppressing that dukkha. Both of those extremes don't bring a real liberation from dukkha, but it's bringing the attention, idang dukkhang. This is dukkha, this is the experience of dissatisfaction. Now, where does this come from? So that consciously turning towards the feeling of dissatisfaction, towards dukkha, and looking, okay, now where does this come from? What is this? That, I say, bringing attention to it, not to amplify it or make it stronger, but to understand it. And then through that understanding, then we're able to free the heart from the limitations of those painful feelings. So Luang Por Chah used to compare it to catching a snake, again in the northeast of Thailand in those days, catching snakes and removing them from your kuti, from your hut, or from the meditation hall and such like was quite a common thing. And growing up in northeast Thai villages, it was a very natural example for Luang Por Chah to take. So he said, if you pick up a snake in an incorrect way, if you take hold of the head, it'll bite you straight away. That's like grasping dukkha, wallowing in dukkha. Is just reaching for the head of the snake bites you straight away. So something is painful, is difficult, and then we go to the poor me, ow, that really hurts, life is unfair. So that's the reaching for the head and getting bitten by dukkha straight away. If we grasp at happiness or comfort and evading dissatisfaction, he said it's like taking hold of the tail of the snake. It doesn't hurt at once, but if you pick up a snake by its tail, very quickly it reaches around and it'll bite you. So he said if you grasp happiness and comfort and convenience, then it's quite pleasant at first. It's just like the tail of a snake. There's no teeth there, but it'll whip around and bite you. So the way to handle a snake skillfully is to take a forked stick, a stick with a little fork at the end, and approach the snake very carefully and attentively, and then without trying to hurt the snake at all, you bring the stick up from behind the snake's head, and then you plant the forked stick just behind the head. Then you reach forward and you pick up, reaching from behind, not from the teeth side, but the back of the head. You pick it up by that same area, the neck of the snake, and then you put it into a sack, carry it off to the edge of the forest, and let it go. So that's kind of approaching the sharp end of the snake, the toothy end, approaching the duka end, but with care and mindfulness and with the appropriate tools, then you can handle that situation without yourself being hurt, without the snake being hurt. Everyone is okay. So I was, from hearing that many, many years ago, when I was a novice there in Thailand, I thought that's a really brilliant. I'd never had to catch a snake myself, but I thought that's a really brilliant example, because that's what we're doing with the discomforts and inconveniences and the difficulties of life. We're approaching them mindfully and carefully with the right tools of wise reflection and mindfulness, and then by picking up the snake, the painful feelings in the appropriate way, then we can let go of that, the causes and conditions that have brought that uncomfortable situation, or that tricky situation about. We can carry the snake to the edge of the forest and let it go. So I'm not sure if that many of us who've grown up here in England haven't done a lot of snake catching. But hopefully that serves as a good example, so that when we are dealing with our life, with conflicts in the family, with our physical illnesses, with economic difficulties in the current society, the condition of the society, many people are suffering a lot with basic amenities and providing for the family. Though wherever the feeling of dukkha might be, whether it's in our health or in society or in the family, the workplace, then to approach that place of difficulty with that same kind of mindfulness and care, and to explore. There is this feeling of dukkha. Where's it coming from? And how to work with this, how to understand it, and how to let go of the causes. So that the principle of life then, and why that would be associated with this quality of inconvenience or difficulty. What it's doing is saying that if we really want to resolve the difficulties of our life, then we need to wake up, A, and then B, approach those difficulties, not run away from them, not evade them, or not indulge in them, but to wake up and to go and meet those difficulties. Hence, the readiness to work with inconvenient things being inconvenient, uncomfortable, and challenging. When the Buddha spoke about, this principle in the Dhammapada, many of us are familiar with a verse Luang Por Sumedho used to quote very often in the early days of Amaravati, because of Amaravati meaning the deathless realm. Verse number 21 of the Dhammapada is, mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. The mindful never die. The heedless are as if dead already. So that's the encouragement to wake up. If you want to experience deathlessness, if you want to transcend death, then wake up. And that principle of say wakefulness and being alert to the present. This is the key. That's why inconvenience can be very useful to us, because it helps us to wake up, like walking on the stones, on the alms round, or actually this chair. This chair is not so convenient. When this was offered, I thought, what's a beautiful thing. It's a lovely chair. It's from Rajasthan. I think the father of one of the lay supporters here, maybe she's here today, brought this back from India when he was posted there in the early part of the 20th century. It was a kind of family treasure. So she said, "Can I donate this to the monastery? Because it's a fine thing." And I said, "Oh yes." Sitting in it is not particularly as easy or as comfortable in ordinary chairs. But I thought, well, this is a lovely thing. We should make use of it. It's some craftsperson spent hours and hours and hours inlaying all the metal work into the wood. What a beautiful thing! Yeah, it's been offered to us. We should make use of it, and so that sometimes what is inconvenient then helps us to pay a closer attention, helps us to wake up. So I have to be careful I don't slide out of it. And to say, well, why don't you just choose a chair that you won't slide out of, that's more comfortable, that's easier to be with. Say, well, because this is a gift, it's something that it's beautiful, it was a family heirloom, so we can respect that gift, that generosity, and the history of this coming from Rajasthan and India and making its journey all the way over here to England, now living in this Buddhist temple and being part of the amenities here. So when we choose inconvenience, when we are, say, aiming to live simply, living with the conditions that life presents to us, again, it doesn't mean that we're trying to torture ourselves, but the principal qualities that living with inconvenience, difficulty bring with it is that we need to be patient and we need to be unselfish. So I feel that the society, the sort of drift towards things being more convenient, more comfortable, more easy, means we don't have to wait. We never have to be patient, and things can be set up for our own satisfaction, our own pleasure, and that seems to be the most important thing for many, many people. It's like me feeling comfortable, me feeling happy, me being gratified moment to moment. I remember many, many years ago there was I don't want to malign anybody who works for American Express, but there was an American Express credit card advert, and the slogan was, "Take the waiting out of wanting." Good, it's a neat slogan. Take the waiting out of wanting. You can want something and get it immediately. You don't have to wait. So I feel that is a kind of going quite counter to the wisdom of the Buddha's teaching that says the opposite, and insofar as it says patient endurance is the supreme practice, and that it's through patient endurance, the development of the paramita of khanti, that is what most directly and completely liberates the heart. And so that quality of patience, being ready to go the inconvenient way, if you're trying to come onto a road and you just allow the traffic to go past, you don't just cut out of the side road and just barge in front of an oncoming car, but you let the others go by. You wait. And then when there's a gap, then you can pull out onto the main road. The people who are driving by appreciate, oh, that person, they're waiting patiently. I don't have to look out to make space for them. Just simple things like the etiquette on the road. Or if you are looking for a parking space in a car park, multi-story car park, and you can see there's a space up ahead, just waving another car ahead of you to go and take the space, and you'll go and find another one. You're going to make that person's day. Like, wow, look at that. They let me have the space. What an extraordinary thing. How kind, how generous. So being patient, patient endurance is the supreme practice for burning up unskillful karma. And in the forest tradition, this is kind of the sort of national motto of the Wat Pa, the forest monasteries of Thailand, Kwam Ot Thon in the Thai language, endurance. So when people would go to Luang Por Chah and say, "Oh, Luang Por, my mind is really crazy, I've got these terrible defilements," and Luang Por would say, "Ot Thon Dai Mai, can you endure?" Luang Por, I really want to go and visit this other monastery. I'm really keen to go off traveling and walk to this other monastery. But say, well, this isn't the right season. This isn't a good time. You can go next year. Ot Thon Dai Mai. Can you endure? Luang Por, I've got this terrible illness, this infection in my leg. I keep limping around. I can't walk properly. Ot Thon Dai Mai, can you endure? So we're not, again, trying deliberately to make problems for ourselves, but learning to develop patience, because what we're doing with our life, and when things are easy and convenient and comfortable, we'll say when we meet with dukkha or difficulty, we'll find a way around it. We don't look at that aspect of what is my mind doing with this. Okay, I've got an injured foot, or I'd like to go traveling, but what am I doing with that feeling of I want to go somewhere, or I want this to heal, or I don't want to be bothered with this? Can we turn the attention around and look at how is my mind handling this particular situation, this difficult member of the family, this difficult situation in the workplace? Not just looking at, oh, that person's difficult, how can I get away from them? But what is my mind doing with this argument? What is my mind doing with this illness, or this debt, or this conflict in the family? And that what patient endurance is doing, this Kanti Paramita is doing, it's not just, patience isn't just, in the Buddhist respect, it's not just gritting your teeth and sort of pushing through and just out of sheer determination, but rather it's a practice of profound letting go. In Buddhist psychology, patience is not a state of waiting. You're not waiting for something painful to be over, but rather you're opening the heart to exactly this condition. Here it is, in this moment. I prefer not to have this illness or this injury, this conflict, but here it is. In this moment, it's exactly like this. So the way to freedom and the way patience is used is opening the heart to a difficult experience and not arguing against it, not resenting, not creating negativity, but say that sense of, well, this is painful, it's uncomfortable, but I don't have to make a problem out of it. Doesn't mean that we don't take medicine, or we don't do exercise to try and heal ourselves, or we don't work to try and pay off the debt. But in that moment, we are not looking as the problem essentially being out there, but the problem is how the mind handles it. So that when we choose inconvenience, or choose to say stay with a difficult situation, a difficult relationship, an illness and such like, then the result is that we're far more able to work harmoniously and effectively with that illness, that argument, that debt, or that difficulty, whatever it might be. Many years ago, I was at some teachings by His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Los Angeles. It was a big auditorium, I think in Pasadena, and several thousand people gathered there, and he had been giving teachings for several days. And there was time for people to ask questions, open things up for dialogue and questions. And one of the people there asked, Your Holiness, what is the quickest way to enlightenment? And so he started giving a kind of sort of technical response, and sort of quoting various great acharyas of the ancient past, Ashwagosha and Vasubandhu. And then he kind of stopped in mid-sentence, and he put his head in his hands, and he was crying. He just started weeping. And he kind of stopped himself in mid-sentence and said, no, this is totally wrong. This, to even ask that question is completely missing the point. I can't carry on giving you an answer in those terms, because it's just so against Buddha Dhamma. We shouldn't be thinking what's the quickest, what's the easiest, what's the most convenient. We should instead be thinking, however long it takes, okay. Whatever I have to give for this, okay. Not just be thinking in terms of how fast can I get what I want. It was very touching. There were several thousand people in this big auditorium. There's the Dalai Lama crying in front of you. And he really felt it, that he meant that very seriously, that was such a wrong attitude, it kind of broke his heart. So that was very touching, very impactful, and I felt it was very much in accord with the forest tradition teachings. Similarly, the quality of unselfishness, and that when we go the way of convenience or comfort or the seeking what is sort of pleasant or good for me, then we are, say, drawn by that urge to follow the, well, me first, or I got mine, or I want to make sure I'm okay, or I got what I like. And Luang Por Chah would talk about this. He said, and in those days in northeast Thailand, an apple was a very, very rare thing. It was a kind of precious. I mean, we would think maybe of a ripe mango being very special in this country. But in northeast Thailand, in the 1970s, an apple was like a kind of strange, mysterious, precious thing. And Luang Por Chah would use the example that if you've got two apples, and there's one that's that's really ripe and crisp and it looks like it's going to be really delicious, and you've got one that's a bit sort of small and green, and then your friend is there. Then which apple will you offer to your friend? He said, if we are thinking of duaton, of ourselves, then you'll offer the small green one to your friend, and you'll keep the big crispy red one for yourself. He said, it takes it's painful to say, here, you have the nice one. I'll just take the little green one. He said, it's painful, it's difficult, but then if you pass through that like those curtains, if you kind of make it through that painful patch, and then you actually give the better one to share with your friend, then how does that feel? It feels really good, doesn't it? So this is the challenge with selfishness, is to recognize, like, yes, there is that, me first. There is that impulse that we very easily experience as natural and ordinary for us. Yes, that's there, but we don't have to be dominated by that. We can pass through that, like walking through the curtains, and then if we share what we've got, we offer what is most precious to us. We are ready to give that away. Then the feeling in the heart after that's been shared is so nice. Whereas the feeling in the heart after we've kept the good stuff for me is like I've got the good stuff, but I don't feel so happy about myself. So Luang Por Chah was a very practical teacher. He said, look at how it works. This is the dynamic of it. And so that in terms of choosing inconvenience, then choosing unselfishness, choosing patience, and all of us in our lives, whether we are living in the monastery, whether we're in the workplace, we're working in a school or a bank or a hospital or an embassy, whatever our place of work is, or our family situation, whether it's living with our elders, with our children, our grandchildren, fellow community members, we always have opportunities to practice patience, and we always have the opportunity to practice unselfishness. So these are also to be used with wisdom, not kind of craziness, so that you're starving yourself by giving everything away, or you're kind of freezing because you haven't got any warm clothing because you've given it all away. You do need to be practicing these things with wisdom. But I do feel, particularly with respect to patience, that this is something that's not really understood very clearly. That, as I said, often when we think, I'm practicing patience, it's like we're using strength to grit our teeth and wait for this painful thing to be over. But the quality of patience as a paramita, a kanti paramita, we don't really have a word in English that quite matches that. Because to genuinely practice patience, which is a paramita, it's a brightness of the heart. It's to do with how we handle painful feelings or things that are uncomfortable, difficult. But true patience is not waiting. You're not waiting for something painful to be over. Genuine patience, the patience that's the paramita that carries the heart across to liberation, is a letting go of time. You're not saying, oh, well, soon this will be over and then everything will be okay. Or then I'll be comfortable. This will be done and then I can. But no, genuine patience is in opening the heart to the timeless quality of Dhamma. It's the opening the heart to that akaliko Dhamma, the timelessness. There is no future. That in this moment it's just this. And so then, even if it's something uncomfortable, physically or emotionally, socially, then we find, oh, it's just this painful feeling, that's all. It's just this awkward situation, that's all. So in this respect, again, to do with patience, I like to encourage people in what I call a very, very refined practice, which is called mindfulness of awkward feeling. So when you're in a dialogue with someone, or you're dealing with something in the workplace or in the family, like this, oh dear, what am I going to do with this? Feeling like, oh, that person's upset, or I just said something that was unhelpful, or they're looking irritated, or they want to get away. It's an awkward feeling. So rather than trying to fix that or cover it over, in that moment we can turn the attention inwards and recognize, this is an awkward feeling. That's what this is. It's just, this is the, oh dear, I wanted to avoid this, but it's just happened feeling. That's what this is. And mysterious, and I use this practice a lot myself. You know, I'm living in a large community, lots of encounters and dialogues, engagements with people, that it's a kind of a marvelous practice. It takes a bit of mindfulness to remember to apply it, but I used to be very aversive to difficult situations. I wanted to fix things or get away or cover things over, make everything all right. But to develop patience in this way and openness of heart, to say, just recognize, well, this is an awkward situation. It doesn't mean that you're switching off or that you don't care. You're still paying attention to what's going on, but you're recognizing, oh, this is the kind of thing I was trying to avoid, and here it is. Aha, this is what it feels like. And mysteriously, when you open your heart to that as an experience, as an emotional tone, then you find yourself much more able to work with the situation in a harmonious and balanced way. So also in the forest tradition, in Thailand, we also call the Dutanga tradition, and Dutanga is a word in Thai language. It's transliterated to Tudong, and the Dutanga practices were the 13 different kinds of ascetic practice that the Buddha allowed for his monastic community in order to make things a bit more inconvenient. A bit more difficult, so that he discouraged self-mortification, like self-torture, like standing on one leg for 40 years, or holding your arm up in the air, or hanging from a branch from a tree by your hand or something. These kind of ascetic practices that are still carried out in India and other places. So the Buddha discouraged those kind of self-torture practices, but he did allow a certain number of ways of challenging it, kind of raising the level of challenge. So the forest tradition, the meditation tradition in Thailand, they emphasize these Dutanga practices, and so that's part of our way of life, is deliberately making things less convenient, less comfortable, and it's particularly to challenge 4 areas of our life. And I'm not going to suggest as lay people you adopt all of these or any of these, but I thought, looking at the title for today's talk, I'd address these, because there's ways that we can introduce the same kind of spirit into our daily life, the workplace, and into our lives. So that the 4 areas that the Dutanga practices challenge are food, sleep, personal space, and physical comfort. So these are all what they call reptile brain areas of our life, instinctual, non-conceptual areas of our life, where we are very attached to food. We need to eat. We get hungry. We need to provide for the body. We need to sleep. We need to rest. And refresh the body through sleep. We like to have shelter. We need shelter. We like our personal space, a place where we can have our own things and set things up the way that we like. And we like physical comfort. We want to make things sort of nice and pleasant, and to stay the right temperature that is pleasing for us, and such like. So the Dhutanga practices address those four areas quite deliberately, and so that, not to go into too much detail, but they are things like, for monastics, only eating the food that is put into your bowl on the alms round in the morning, not accepting any food that's brought to the monastery, or eating all of your food together in one bowl, or eating all of the food for the day at one sitting, not accepting any food that's given later on, but just, all of the food for the day is in one bowl, and that's what you eat, and then that's all that's consumed for that day. So if you put those limitations in place, then you begin to notice how instinctual your reactions can be. So, for example, when I was a novice, I was extremely keen. I was 21 years old. I was very ardent, very keen. I'm like, I want to do it. I want to really make a good job of this monastic life. This is the Dhutanga tradition. Yeah, me too. So I asked, and if you're a junior person, you have to ask permission of the teacher to take on any of these Dhutangas. So I asked the Ajahn if I could, this was after Ajahn Amaro had moved to London, so the abbot of Wat Pa Nanachat was Ajahn Pabakro, who was also an American monk, been a helicopter pilot in the Vietnam War in the American Army. So anyway, I asked him permission, can I just, for the Pansar, for the rains retreat, can I just live on whatever alms food I get in my bowl on the bindabata, on the alms round through the village, and just not accept anything else that is given in the monastery. So he gave me permission for that. And so that, I was 21 years old and a sort of vigorous lad, and so keen to have a belly full of food each day. But it was kind of really interesting how that Dhutanga made you acutely aware of food and the hunger of the body. And as a novice, I was walking at the back of the line of the monks going through the village. And even though I was at the back of the line of monks, and you could see sort of 3 or 4 villagers lined up with their little rice baskets or their plates with things on, the things on the plates would be things like a banana or sweet corn, some green beans, such like things that the late King Bhumibol Adulyadej had developed many programs for people growing vegetables and distributing seeds and training people in market gardening in the remote regions of the country. So they grew things like sweet corn and green beans and pumpkins and such like. So seeing a few, 1 or 2 people kneeling down by their houses with a plate, there's some stuff I might get there, other than just the rice. That looks promising. And even at about sort of 25 or 30 yards, you could count the number of bananas on a plate. And at least in my memory, like you could. And I'm the 5th one in line. Are there 4 bananas or 5? And how acute your vision gets, because they're like, I want some for me. And so the purpose of a Dhutanga like that is to say, recognize how when we're driven by those instinctual passions, then that becomes the most important thing in the world. The world has shrunk to that plate in that, held by that villager. That's the only thing that's interesting in the universe. But then there's the wisdom mind that says, isn't that amazing? Just because you're hungry, that becomes the most important thing in the world. And if there are 5 bananas on the plate, that's a good thing. And if there's only 4, that's bad. Look at that. Look what the mind makes of a simple situation like that. So then, because you're doing this kind of practice reflectively, and you're using it as a wisdom training and a spiritual practice, then the purpose of it is, look at that. Look at what my mind is doing with that. Aha, how it gives this value. And so, again, I leave it to you as individuals how you might say work with the food that you take, or the kind of way that you run your diet, or limitations you might choose to put upon food, or how many times you eat during a day. It's entirely your own business, but. If we establish those kind of standards or principles, it's quite amazing. As soon as you say, okay, I'll have 1 day a week with no sweets, how the mind starts to maneuver, like, well, it's not really that sweet. It's It doesn't really count as a sweet. It's sweetish. Therefore, it's okay. So, I'll have that. So, and the purpose of doing it, again, is not just as if there's some kind of inherent good karma about these things, but to get to look at the mind, see how the mind maneuvers and manipulates and tries to get what it wants, so that we can understand those impulses. So I kept the practice. So with a limitation on sleep, one of the dhutangas is to choose not to lie down. So that you only use 3 postures, sitting, standing, and walking. You don't lie down at all. And so you learn to sleep, sitting up or leaning against a wall. So I kept that practice for about 3.5 years. And you discover after a short period of time there is no comfortable posture. Even sitting in a really comfortable chair, still things ache, and you learn how to find enough rest and to deal with tiredness. Again, you're not trying to do it to just the idea of creating good karma or to torture yourself, but learning about those instinctual impulses I just want to switch off, I just want to stop feeling, I just want to check out, or I'd really like to just relax everything. And to say, well, no, this period of time, that's not available. So what it does is, that was many, many years ago that I took on that practice. It was 2 years up at Harnham Monastery, in the first year and a half I was here at Amaravati, from August of 83 to December of 87. Then 86, I think. Then I kept that practice. Anyway, so it was very revealing, and I developed a lot of ability to sleep in any posture. so it's kind of a handy skill to have, that I learned how to just lean against the wall and just switch off for 5 minutes and go into a restful state. So again, I'm not saying everyone should take that on, or it would necessarily be beneficial, but just limiting the amount of sleep that you take at night, just to put a boundary there and see what the effect is. With the dhutangas about personal space, the practice of living under a tree, camping out. So that we would just go on these long walks through the countryside, just hang up a mosquito net and have a mat and just live under the trees. And sometimes the Wat Bapong Lumpur Cha would say, okay, it's the cold season, people are huddling away inside your kutis, all wrapped up in blankets. Okay, everyone move out of your kutis for the next 2 weeks. We're going to just live on the forest floor, and we'll use that for a 2-week retreat period. So you're not taking refuge in the comfort of your kuti, but you're learning to deal with the living in the elements. So I mention these kind of practices, and I really do leave it up to individuals how to apply them. But these areas of physical comfort, personal space, food and sleep, they are all things that we have very deeply rooted instinctual relationships to. And when we can't get comfortable, when we haven't got enough sleep, or we're hungry, or we haven't got the food that we like, how much dukkha the mind can create. Like, I need to have my bed. I can't sleep if it's not my bed. I need to have this food, not that food. I've got to have it. I've got to have my space should be like this. So what we're doing with these kind of dhutanga practices, you're deliberately using inconvenience to develop a tremendous adaptability in your heart. So if it's the food you like or the food that you don't like, okay. If it's your bed or another bed, okay. If it's a nice sheltered enclosed spot to make your own, okay. If it's a more open or vulnerable situation, okay. You are ready to work with a large variety of different experiences. So we develop a robustness and adaptability of the heart. So that's the purpose of these kind of practices, so that we use inconvenience, discomfort, and such things, to develop those kind of strengths, the ability to live with different circumstances. So, and it's particularly useful when we get older and we have aches and pains and can't get away from them. When we are physically dependent upon others, we can't walk on our own. We have to have an arm to lean on. Like, Luang Por Sumedho, his legs are quite poor. His balance is not good because his feet are quite numb. So you'll notice whenever you see Luang Por Sumedho, he's leaning on the arm of usually Ajahn Amaro. Even a walking stick isn't enough because he can easily lose his balance. He's a big person. So Luang Por Sumedho, if he's going for a walk, he needs another person to lean on, literally. So because he's trained himself very well over the years, he doesn't resent that or begrudge that. Oh, I want to be doing this by myself. Just leave me alone. I can do this. He, instead of trying to sustain the independence that he had when he was more physically able, instead he goes, okay, if I want to go for a walk, Ajahn Amaro, are you free? And just goes with a companion because that's what he needs to do. His eyesight is quite poor, so if someone's more than 2 meters away, he can't recognize you. They say, good to see you, Luang Por. He say, who's that? And then again, one of us will say, oh, it's this person or that person, because he can't see. But that the value of consciously using inconvenience, discomfort, and so on and so forth, is that when those abilities go because of aging or illness or different situations, then our heart is ready. You don't take it as a loss. It's like being around Luang Por Sumedho is an incredibly good, teaching, because he doesn't put out any kind of feeling of resentment or like, oh, it's so annoying, I can't see well, or I can't hear well, or I can't move by myself. It's just, okay, I need an arm to lean on, okay. It's not, he doesn't feel diminished or that it's a loss or even a difficulty. It's just, okay, this is the conditions as I find them, this is how we work with it. So these kind of conscious working with inconveniences, difficulties and challenges, they develop this extraordinary adaptability within us. We don't rely upon being able to see or hear or even think straight. Because we're not taking refuge in those capacities or those qualities of comfort, but we're taking refuge in the heart itself, that which knows, and then on the practical, physical level, we're ready to adapt. So you can look up the Dhutangas. If you want to know all the detail, you can look them up on Wikipedia. 13 Dhutanga practices, and then just do as an intellectual exercise. You can think, well, how can I possibly apply these kind of things in my life? Or you might recognize the fact, well, I've actually got like 4 of those already, Ajahn, just because of my medical conditions and my age and my lack of hearing and my dodgy eyesight. Like, I've got a few Dhutangas already. Well, fine, but it's the consciously using those as a spiritual training rather than resenting the fact that you used to be able to see well, but now you can't, or you used to be able to climb stairs and now you can't. But say, okay, well, how can I learn from this? How can I not add any suffering to this? How can I live with this set of conditions and learn from it rather than begrudging the fact, well, when I was young, I used to be able to. So, and maybe the last thing to talk about, again, looking at the title of this, the theme for this talk, Choose Life, Choose Inconvenience. A number of years ago, the former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore, wrote a book called An Inconvenient Truth, which was about climate change. I think he wrote it about 20 years ago. And at the time, people thought, what's this politician doing writing about the environment? I mean, that's not really that big of an issue. But it was quite a prophetic book, because the way that things have been developing with the climate, with the raising temperatures, the increasing carbon dioxide levels, and the general awareness of the ecological difficulties of the planet, it was very prescient, as they say. He was very much ahead of the curve. And I thought it was a very skillfully named book. An Inconvenient Truth is that we are running out of resources. The planet is getting warmer. The ice caps are melting. Resources are diminishing. The variety of animal species, plant species are diminishing. It's an inconvenient truth. We would prefer there to be an infinite amount of resources, infinite, amount of food and space for everyone to live their chosen life and to have to provide their wishes for them. But it's an inconvenient truth that we are going to have to give some things up to live in a way that is more eco-friendly, a way that is less selfish. So the way we've been redeveloping the site here at Amaravati is trying to put up eco-friendly buildings heated by air source heat pumps, trying to get off fossil fuels altogether, and to lower the carbon footprint that we make in the world. It's more expensive. It's inconvenient to a certain extent, but the long-term results are very, very beneficial for our community, and the expense of running the site drops a great deal because of not using fossil fuels. So that, I feel, is an important thing to bear in mind, that if we are, choose life, choose inconvenience, choose to give up single-use plastics. And even now, the government, I just saw in the news, is banning plastic cutlery, like throwaway cutlery, and the kind of materials used for fast food and such like. That plastic shopping bags in Ireland, they banned, sort of national ban on plastic shopping bags for supermarkets, and people have to use reusable bags and so on and so forth. So it's inconvenient, but it's part of choosing life, that if we don't undertake these practices that are more eco-friendly, that are less selfish, then it won't just be the choosing life psychologically, like choosing to be awake, choosing to be on that path to the deathless. It won't be just be a psychological choosing life, it's also a physiological choosing life, that if we don't change our habits as a human society, then life on this planet is going to get very, very difficult very, very quickly, I would say, just looking at the reports of various different scientists and the reliable information that you get from various research bodies, that it's inconvenient. We have to reduce our consumption. We have to get off fossil fuels and to lower our carbon footprint on the world. It's inconvenient, but it's also what helps to lead to our physical lives and our own well-being being supported, being enabled to flourish into the future. So I felt it was whoever came up with, amongst the Sangha, who came up with that title of "Choose Life, Choose Inconvenience." I thought, well, it's an inspired choice, because in a way that's what we face, and it's only inconvenient to our ego most of the time, to our heart, like sharing the apple, giving away the good apple, offering that up. That it's inconvenient to our ego, to our self-concern, but it's beneficial for the whole. That's why, as Luang Por Chah would say, when you give away the one that is most precious, then the ego goes, "Oh, I don't want to," but the heart goes, "Yes," because it rejoices in that. So I offer these thoughts for consideration this afternoon, and please do take some refreshment. There should be some tea available in the cloister, and then we can gather back in about 20 minutes for some questions and some dialogue. So I'd like to open things up for some questions. There's a microphone there. I would ask people can use that. Also, I should mention that at the moment I'm helping to lead an online retreat. So there's 75 retreatants that have been watching and listening to this over a live stream. So it's not broadcast to the public, but there's another 75 people on the other side of that camera who are also joining with us at this moment. So they are not physically present, but they're psychologically present. So that is a unique feature of what we can provide in these times. So any questions people have, don't be shy. This is opportunity to ask. If you could use the microphone, that would be very helpful. If you slide the switch up to the top.
Hello? Oh, yeah. So, yes, my question is, where do you find yourself on the side of self-mortification? And when are you on just being inconvenient and challenging yourself? And where is that fine line of knowing when you're stepped over to the one side of self-mortification and gone too far?
Well, good question. That's where mindfulness comes in, and also the input from your spiritual companions, your spiritual teachers, because we can't always tell for ourselves exactly what the middle way is. But you please do sit down if you like. Yeah. Though we can't always tell what the middle way is, and so we might, with great zeal and interest, like when one of the monks with Ajahn Amaro, when Wat Pa Nanachat, the International Forest Monastery, first opened up, and Ajahn Amaro was going to lead his first rains retreat there, then one of the junior monks, after the Ajahn had said, so anyone who wants to carry out any of the Dhutanga practices, they should ask permission from myself before they undertake everything. And then this junior monk who was there said, yeah, I would like to, Ajahn. And he said, well, which ones? And he said, well, all of them, all 13. He said, no. He'd been a Marine in Vietnam, that one. So I want to do all of them. And so the Ajahn said, no, just go. Ramp it down a bit. That you're enthusiastic, but that's not practical. And also it's the rainy season, so that you have to live inside a kuti. You can't live under the trees in the rainy season. So he persuaded him down to 2 or 3 of the ones. A few of them were standard for Wat Pa Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery, like eating all of your food in a bowl together. That was a standard. And eating 1 meal a day and not accepting food later on. That was the standard, and I believe is still the standard at Wat Pa Pong. So some of them were kind of de rigueur, but this particular monk was sort of saying, I want to do the whole thing. So our spiritual companions and then our teachers, also our own wisdom, if you undertake something and you realize, well, I thought this was a good idea, but this is really causing some damage, or I'm not handling this very skillfully. I'm getting, I'm creating more hassles out of the limitations, and I'm creating more suffering. I'm not so using this in a way that helps the mind to transcend suffering. I'm just multiplying it. So either I need to do it differently, or I need to get some advice how to work that. Because Dhamma is a relational practice. We practice in connection with other people, so that almost always one has got some friends or like-minded people that you can draw upon and say, this is what I've been experiencing, this feels a bit out of balance, so what advice can you give me? Or your friends will come up to you and say, are you all right? Like when I was doing what they call the sitter's practice, not lying down to sleep, when we had a winter retreat time here at Amaravati, I used to never use a zafu. I would always just sit flat on the mat. I thought cushions were for wimps, And so this a young Anagarikar came up to me with a zafu and said, "Can I offer you this cushion, Ajahn?" And I said, "I don't need one." And she said, "I think you do," because she was getting fed up of watching me falling asleep during the meditation. So I've swallowed my pride and accepted the zafu to sit on. So, it's not easy to tell for ourselves, but our companions can help us. So, any other questions, thoughts? Please don't be shy. If you slide the switch up to the top. Yeah.
I was really interested in what you were saying about, I guess, staying in the discomfort of conflict. And I'm finding that really hard. And feeling like, well, it's got to be the right thing to try and fix this. And yeah, I would just love to hear more about how we can navigate that when there is a conflict with a dear friend and it sort of feels like the instinct to make everything better will be better for everyone, but it turns out doesn't seem to be that way.
Yes. Well, that, as I was saying, that's somewhat home territory for me. I've always been very conflict aversive, so that sense of I've got to fix this, make everyone happy, make everything all right, and so the result was I worried a lot, and I would, just as you were describing, and I was mentioning earlier, how the impulse would be to fix things or try to smooth things over, but very often trying to fix things, that the tryingness and the meanness trying to fix it would just complicate matters and make things more difficult, and the kind of principle that I found that was very, very helpful was there's a line in the verses of the third Chan patriarch, the Sin Ming, the verses on the faith mind. Towards the end, it's a sutra that was written in China by Master Sengsan, sort of in the 6th or 7th century. And towards the end of the sutra, he says, to be in the one way, to have the mind attuned to reality, is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. And I'd read that many, many times. I'd heard it said and read it many times, but at a certain point it jumped off the page. And it was at a time when Ajahn Amaro was teaching a lot about mindfulness of emotion. And it just, suddenly I kind of saw it in a whole different way, an extra dimension. Yeah, I'm always anxious about non-perfection. Yes. That if some things aren't quite right or they're imbalanced, there's this reaction to try and fix it, make it right. And so to be without anxiety about non-perfection, to see something that's out of order, out of balance, that's awkward, and then to not fix it, but just to know, oh, this is what's happening in this moment. Then what happens is that there's an attunement to the situation on a more profound level, and then you're coming at it responsively rather than reactively. If that makes sense. So to react means there's an impulse and you just say something or do something, and there's no space around it. It's like a conditioned, unreflective reaction. To respond means taking it in, letting there be some space around it, and letting some words or actions or not doing something arise from that spaciousness. So as I started to apply that, I found that was extraordinarily helpful. So then that developed into this sort of conscious practice of mindfulness of awkward feeling. And so it's not just, you're not just sort of freezing yourself. Again, in that same verse, the Sin Ming, the verses on the faith mind, he says, if you try to stop activity to achieve passivity, your very effort fills you with activity. So it's not, you're not freezing yourself or trying to say, don't do anything, don't just be, just watch. It's not that kind of pushing away or freezing, but rather just letting there be some more space, more psychological space around that awkward feeling. As I was saying in the talk, that sense of, oh, this is exactly what I didn't want to happen, and it's just happened. Aha, that's what this feeling is. So you care, you're involved, but you're not just trying to push it away or explain something or just fix it, but rather there's an attunement. And then out of that, then if there's something to say, then you can say it. If there's like nothing to say, then you can keep quiet. It takes quite a lot of mindfulness, and also a lot of mindfulness of the body, because often at times that reactivity, that is almost like a physical reaction. It's like a reflex sort of jerk of the system. And so that along with mindfulness of the dialogue or the situation and what your thoughts are doing with it, also what your body is like tensing up in some situation of conflict. There's a heated discussion going on in the room, or so mindfulness of the body, and then so relaxing the body in the midst of the situation, and then relaxing the attitude, and seeing, and then the last part is then when you do that, when there's a responding to the situation like that, looking at the result, and then over and over again, it's like, wow, well, that was much better, or that was helpful. So there's this feedback that is not conceptual. It's like you see, oh, well, that's actually helped the communication work more completely, and that's helped to resolve that conflict. That shifted the energy of the exchange. Aha, look at that. So you let the good results of responding rather than reacting be what informs you. So it makes it easier to keep learning to do that and doing that into the future. It's often we take passivity, like that sense of trying to be unattached, or to be practicing emptiness or non-grasping, and that can be say with a good intention, but actually what we're doing inside is we're pushing things away. It's what they call vibhava tanha, that desire. I'm out of here. I'm not getting involved. Like, and it's that nihilism or vibhava tanha, that pushing away. So it's not really non-attachment. It's attaching to pushing away. So again, the quality of mindfulness of seeing that I don't want to deal with this feeling, to say, okay, that's the I don't want to deal with this feeling. Okay, there that is, and so I use that practice a lot in my daily life. So I hope that's helpful. So any other questions, thoughts, clarifications? If you push the switch towards the top.
Hello.
That's it, yes.
Thank you, Ajahn. Could you say a bit more about when you offer the mature, tasty apple and the person say, "Oh, I'm not sure," and then you go, "Oh, but." Then you feel like there's an investment in that action. There's actually, you have an agenda now to provide with the good apple, or the apple is not taken and is left on the table there, and then you're wondering whether you have let go of it, but it's still there, it's going to go bad. All those kind of scenarios. Thank you.
Yeah, good question. As I was giving that as an example, I realized, well, there could be quite a few dimensions to this. So the best thing is to have no agenda. That's if you offer the other person the good apple, the nice apple, and they say, "Oh no, thanks, that's fine. You have it." They say, "Okay." That just responding to the situation as your intuition guides. And so sometimes we can be overly self-sacrificial If you understand that say you offer the nice apple, say no, you must have it. Say no, I insist you have it, and you're going back and forth, and you're getting caught into this trying to be unselfish, trying to be generous, trying to give things away when you're kind of attached to that as an idea. So for example, again, using my own life, in that same period when I wasn't lying down to sleep, I was very kind of rigorous ascetic, and I never wanted anything kind of nice for myself. And in that era, we used to all have the meal together in the old sala. All the nuns and monks and the lay people. There was a small enough community, we'd all eat there. And so Ajahn Amaro would sit in the middle. And at that time, I was the second monk, the third monk. There was another senior monk there. And so this particular day, Ajahn Amaro had been offered a really kind of elaborate Danish pastry, with jam and crème pâtissière and this kind of glistening with frosting and such like. And so he put it in his bowl lid and passed it to me. And I immediately passed it on to the next monk. And then Luang Por said, "No, I want you to have it." And there was this thought in my mind, but I never have nice things. And he kind of gave me this look, like, yeah, I want you to have it. And so I realized this is a teaching where I was kind of automatically giving good things away because that was kind of an identity that I had. And Ajahn Amaro wanted to know, can he let go of his asceticism? Can he let go of his sort of need to always be giving things away? So I accepted the teaching and the Danish pastry. What was the turning point for that end of that year, sort of the end of 1986, beginning of 87? I was doing so many ascetic practices. I was super strict vegetarian. I wasn't lying down to sleep. I was doing all kinds of extra sort of austerities of one kind or another. And even though I was sort of going without a lot of things, I felt like I was sort of overstuffed. All these practices, these things I was carrying around. And I realized I'm doing all this stuff to let go, and I'm feeling like a kind of an overfed goose that's kind of crammed and overfed. So, and just before the winter retreat of beginning of 1987, and I was chatting with Luang Por Sumedho, and I said, Luang Por, I've decided to give up all of my ascetic practices. And I thought he was going to say, oh well, never mind. You've given it a good go, and well done for all this time you've been putting into your Dhutanga practices, and but never mind. It's probably time to have a rest. But he didn't say that at all. As soon as I said, I've decided to give up all my ascetic practice, he said, about time. He was waiting for me to let go of all this special stuff that I felt I had to be doing to be a kind of good monk. And so the renunciation I had to make was not letting go of food and sleep and such like, but my attachment to that. So when we are giving things up or we're carrying out these sort of simplifications, then it's good to look at the attitude that we have. Where is it coming from in us? So, for example, I lived in California for a long time, and sometimes the very people who were most sort of ardently eco-friendly had the most anger in them, and would be sort of advocating getting off fossil fuels, saving the redwood forests, looking after the purity of the water, and so on and so forth. But so they have very good intentions, but there would be so much rage in them, kind of angry with all the people who weren't protecting the trees, or who weren't caring about the environment, or who were who were going against their ethic. That it was this kind of strange chemistry where their dedication to peacefulness and harmlessness was over here, but their kind of angry, violent, aggressive, and kind of critical mentality was projected on others who were not following their ethics, their ideal. And I feel that the challenge is to look at your motivation. Okay, why is it I want to share this? Where's this coming from? What agenda do I have? And what am I bringing into my life by adopting these particular standards or this simplification? Am I judging other people? Am I creating negativity towards other people? That if they don't think the same way that I do, where's this coming from? What does it bring with it? So this is where the wisdom faculty and reflection is a very, very important part of simplification and wanting to live by a kind of a simpler and more wholesome standard is what's coming with that. Another thing to share. Many years ago, I was staying at Bedale's school. This was in the early 80s. I went to go and stay at Bedale's school on their invitation for a period of a week, a couple of times. And my job was just to sit under a tree in the middle of the school and be available for whoever wanted to show up and have a chat. And the person who was hosting me for those weeks was they didn't have a religious studies teacher, but they had this man, John Rogers, was the sort of resident theologian. So he covered the sort of spiritual side of things for the school. And he was telling me they had a very interesting practice in their family because he'd studied under C.S. Lewis at Oxford University. He'd kind of studied theology, and so a very high-minded, very kind of noble and good-hearted family. And so they had this principle, which what they call the principle of the cakes. So they recognize they're all very generous, they're all very unselfish. So the principle of the cakes is that if you have a dish and you have two donuts, one's an orange donut and one is a lemon donut, and you really like lemon, you don't like orange, so then you assume that the other person likes lemon too, so you put them on the plate, and then in England you're supposed to take the thing that's nearest to you. That's a polite thing to do. So you really like lemon, you don't like orange, but you're offering the lemon one to your other friend. They don't like lemon, but they actually like orange. So they end up taking the lemon one that they don't like, and you get the orange one that you don't like. So both of you end up with a cake that you don't like. So the principle of the cakes in the Rogers family was like, I like lemon. Yeah, and so if it's not too much, I like the lemon one. So you're speaking honestly about what you would really like, and so they would use that not just with cakes, but they would say, not just trying to please other people, because they could see that was a strong habit in the family. So if someone would say, do you want to go and play tennis? Would you like a game of tennis on the school tennis courts? If you really do not want to play tennis, you say, on the principle of the cakes, no. I don't want to play tennis. So that, because they could see they spent so much time doing things they didn't really want to do, just out of an obligation and trying to be nice and be kind of wholesome and spiritual. So that can be a useful, standard to apply, the principle of the cakes, just to be able to say, in all honesty, no, I don't want to play tennis, or I prefer not to do this or not to do that. So you won't find it on Wikipedia. It's, I think, strictly in the Rogers family. Well, maybe they do. Maybe the Rogers family have put it on Wikipedia now. But that was a lesson I learned from there more than 40 years ago now. So I hope that's helpful. So any more questions, thoughts? Yes, please.
Me Bhante. I have two questions. So my first question is how someone should get rid of their procrastination or our own mind who is holding us to do something which we should really be doing. And my second question is how do you always keep smiling?
How do you always
Keep smiling. I have
Keep
been
smiling.
here since Friday. I have seen you yesterday. I am seeing you now. I am always seeing you smiling. How do you keep hold of it?
So first one was procrastination. Well, it depends where that's coming from, and in your own mind. And so I think to explore, what is it that keeps putting things off? Am I lazy? Am I afraid of failing or being criticized? Do I like the feeling of being on the way to something, but I don't like the feeling of arriving, completing something? What's behind it? So using the wise reflection to explore, where's this coming from? Also, part of that is having procrastinated, what's the result? You get grief from your partner, you get grief from people in the workplace. You think, okay, though this is the result of procrastinating, I'm having to make all these excuses, I feel self-critical, I feel like I'm a failure, I'm not pleasing people. This is the result of it. So, how does this feel? And again, using that quality of wise reflection just to explore that. It can be complicated psychologically, like that we procrastinate and we keep failing to do things. Maybe that's because we have a sense of identity around that. That again, not to get sort of too much pocket psychology, but sometimes even an identity that is uncomfortable or unpleasant, we like that. The better the devil we know than the devil we don't know. That we might not think. I like to think of myself as a person who's always disappointing to others. Right? Well, if you spell it out, no, you wouldn't want that. But if there's something that has identified with that at least there's a me who's failing other people, there's a me who's letting other people down. At least there's a me here who's, and that it sounds a bit weird, but sometimes it's those very kind of negative or what we would think of as unappealing aspects. We hang on to those. Me who's always falling short, me who's not good enough, me who's let people down. It's like something is going, yes, that's what I am. On the surface level, it's like, oh, I wish I could please people, or I wish I could be better. But something, that which loves defined being, the bhavatanha, that better to be a me who's a failure than have no defined me at all. So again, it's a little bit into the area of sort of pop psychology, but those can be the kind of things that drive that's who I am. And well, in terms of the clinging, it's not really who we are, but it's like it's an identity that the mind latches onto, so that we keep creating situations. Like a few weeks ago, I gave a talk about self-sabotage. And that, which is called self-sabotage, because you keep sort of obstructing your own best interests. But in a way, it's actually self-assertion. There's a me who's always getting it wrong. There's a me who's got something to hide. There's a me who's letting people down. Yes! And it doesn't make sense rationally, but on a human level, we do that a lot, I would say, as a human family. So I don't know if you were here for that talk on self-sabotage, but I think it's posted online if you want to listen to it. So in terms of procrastination, then it's the kind of thing that makes us do that repeatedly. It's not rational. It doesn't make sense rationally. Like, well, on a rational level, I'm disappointing myself. I'm disappointing other people. I'm not fulfilling my responsibilities. So logically, rationally, it doesn't make sense. But often it's not a rational or logical thing that's driving it. It's the non-rational, non-logical dimensions of our being. So it's good to explore, to investigate and look at where that comes from. Also, you can employ the people around you, your family, friends, co-workers, to say, that's got to be delivered in 3 days. How are you doing? Yeah. And so that to actually get things done, then you can draw upon your friends and companions and spiritual support in that way to work against that, to not just look at the roots of it, but also to counteract the practical effects of it. So it's not just up to you, but drawing other people in to kind of please get in my way and don't let me make any excuses to get around this. If I give you excuses, don't believe them. That kind of thing, just to try and tilt things in a more in a way that we're doing more in the world that is actually fulfilling our promises or our obligations or our undertakings. As to why I'm a smiley kind of a person, that's genetically disposed to smile a lot. That's how it is. Also, I've been a monk for the last 45 years, so that helps. But I always had the appearance of being very sort of cheerful and easygoing. And as I said, I was mentioning earlier how I was always very anxious. And I remember when I was a student, I was at London University many years ago, and I was chatting with a friend of mine, and I just mentioned that I was very anxious, and she said, "You? But you're always so cheerful." And I said, "Oh, inside I'm just a kind of ball of nerves." And she said, "No, you're not." I said, "Yes, I am." But the impression that she had, I knew her pretty well, and the impression she had was I was always kind of chirpy and bright, but the kind of turbulent, anxious, forever fretting kind of character on the inside, I realized that other people can't see that. So, and Ajahn Amaro made the same comment a few years later, after I'd become a monk and I was living at Chithurst. And he said, he made the comment, you're always so confident. And I said, confident? I'm a ball of nerves. He said, really? I said, oh yes, Ajahn. And so it doesn't show on the outside. So I'm used to giving that impression to people. So I think it's also, I'm not joking, 45 years as a monk, it does have a very good effect. I'm definitely not as anxious as I used to be. So that has actually, I would credit a lot of Luang Por Sumedho's instruction, his guidance about mindfulness of emotion, like in the late 80s, early 90s. That was incredibly helpful because I didn't have any kind of perspective on that at all for years and years, and that was extraordinarily helpful, both on the mental side and developing a skillful attitude mentally, but also developing mindfulness of the body in relationship to emotions. And so that really shifted around that time. So I certainly I'm not a ball of nerves anymore. So the inside is more like the outside nowadays. But also in terms of going back to your procrastination question, another aspect to that is to use the sensations of the body when there is that recognition of, oh, I'm putting something off, I'm doing it again, or like, I don't want to do that now. Just to take the attention off the thing that you're supposed to be doing and that you haven't done yet, and then just bring attention into the body. How does this feel? That state being present. What's the physical sensation of this? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it tense? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it numb? What is it? Where is it? So that you're taking that as an angle of approach to kind of get a bit of a different perspective on that, because that was one of the most helpful things that Lumpur Sumedho was teaching in that era, is that every emotion has some kind of somatic dimension. There's a physical sensation that goes along with every emotion. And if you take your attention off the emotion, like love or hate or jealousy or fear, and the thing that you're afraid of or jealous of or irritated by, and you turn the attention around 180 degrees and say, okay, well, this is anger, but where is it? How does it feel? This is fear. Letting go of the thing that you're afraid of and say, look, what does fear feel like? What does procrastination feel like? What does this sense of obligation feel like? And so it takes a bit of mindfulness to literally kind of unhook from the object that you're supposed to be doing in this case, and then bring it back to the physical feeling. But it can be very, very revealing and liberating to say, oh, this is the feeling of fear, or this is that sense of aversion or putting something off. It feels like this, and so then you're by bringing awareness to that physical sensation of it, then the mind is able to get more of a perspective on it. The physical sensation is much, much more simple than the mental complications around particular issues. So I hope that's helpful. So it's just before 4 o'clock now, so let's draw things to a close, and I wish you all well, and whatever has been useful today, please take that with you. Whatever is not useful, then please leave it behind. Ewan.